Today, we're talking about a very interesting topic, one that I'm very fond of, and that is bands. I have played in a couple of different bands over time. I've always been a band guy. Well, I haven't always been a band guy, but since I've taken music seriously, I've enjoyed playing in bands. I've always liked the idea of bands, you know, the camaraderie, people coming together to create a singular musical vision. I joined my first band in 2018 because I wanted to create. So when I joined my first band, I was like really into making films, and the film that I wanted to make was going to be about these musicians. I've always been into music, and I guess I like the drama of obsession and this very crazy mentally musicians striving for something that seems impossible, you know, this high level of greatness. So in order to write that story, I wanted to join some bands, get some experience, find out what it's actually like to be in that kind of environment, creating. Little did I know I would become the character that I was writing about, and here we are. That first band I was in was called On Planet. I didn't create that band, so I joined it when it was already sort of a thing, and that's through that band is how I met Joel, who's now the drummer for Dime Cabaret, and also Max, who was the keyboard player in the first version of Dime Cabaret. That band was a failure. The band I was in after that, which is the original version of Dime Cabaret, was also a failure. But current band, Dime Cabaret, is so far so good. So I have quite a bit of knowledge and experience being in bands that have failed and being in bands that are doing okay at the moment. So I thought I'd make a video about it, and you know, I'm sure we have a bunch of you guys out there who have written your own music, have been in bands, who might want to be in bands. So this video might help you when you eventually get to that stage, or if you're already in a band, you know, maybe this can be a new perspective to help you along on your journey. So for this video, I have constructed 5 points that I thought of in around 10 seconds that are a good place to start when it comes to forming a band and making sure strong foundations are built. So number one, and I think this is incredibly important, have a plan. And I also would like to preface this with saying every band is different, every musician is different. I'm sure there are people who would hate the idea of having a plan and that everything should be just made up on the spot, see where things go. Because I guess not every band is serious. There can be bands that you just do in your spare time, and that's another point I'll get to later. For me, personally, I always think you should have a plan. The first band I was in, for example, didn't have a plan. And, you know, there are times when you might want to hop onto a train and not know where you're going to end up. But, like, if you're actually wanting to invest time into something, and like I feel like you want to know like what's going on. That means, you know, having a plan for releases, having projects like, okay, we're all together now, we're writing 10 songs, and these songs are going to be on an album that we release a year from now, roughly. You know, plans can change, it doesn't have to be set in stone, but like having an idea of what's happening, having some sort of roadmap in mind makes it feel like you're working towards something and you're not just working just towards no specific goal. Having a plan is also just about, you know, how do we write songs? You know, is there one person who's writing these songs? Are we all bringing in songs? Do we start with the riff and take it from there? You know, have a plan for how things are run within the band. Rehearsals, like these are things that there are, of course, like not every band is, you're professional and you're actually like try to take it somewhere, but like rehearsals are something that should be scheduled, not something where, oh, let's just rehearse next week. Saying, okay, once a week we have a rehearsal, and then everybody actually attending that rehearsal. I'll probably make another video on this separate topic in the future, but Dime Cabaret went through a period in, I'd say, late 2020 to even like 2022, where there was actually no plan, surprisingly. There wasn't any vision, really. Nobody knew what was happening. We went through a lot of different band members because we just didn't know what we were doing. Just like writing songs, like, are we going to do this album? Are we going to do this album? We didn't have a plan, which led to, nobody is fully on board the ship. A band without a vision leaves you with no reason to really become invested, because like, what are you becoming invested in? We might eventually make an album, we might eventually do something. Like, you can't get invested in something that's not solid and doesn't have strong foundations. So in these days, like when we had a rehearsal, like people just wouldn't show up like last minute, or they'd be like, oh, I can't really make it because of this. And that, I think, is just signs of people it's not established that we're building something here, and if you're not on board, then what are you doing here? Whereas if you have a band that has strong vision and everybody knows how it's being run, I think there's a higher chance of people actually being invested in making that vision come to life. Tied to that point number 2 is decide on your ambition. So I touched a little bit on this in the previous point, but just, are we a fun band? Are we a casual band? Are we super serious? What are our goals? Do we want to try landing a record label? Or do we want to be writing these massive albums? Or is it okay to just release a single, every month or every 3 months? Deciding on your ambition as a band, just make sure everybody is on the same page. And you don't have half the band who are taking it seriously and half who are taking it casually. Because that is just a recipe for disaster. If you've got like 3 people who are going to every rehearsal, they're practicing so much outside, they're writing songs, they're helping with social media, but then you have like 2 people who sometimes they don't come to rehearsal, they don't care, they don't engage with like fans. To an extent, every band is like that. You're always going to have people who do put in more work and time, and that's even the case in our band. And like, I'm sure like every band I've met, they have, people who do more, just either because it's their band, or they have more time, or they enjoy it. They enjoy certain elements of it more than other elements. Make sure everybody is aware of what is expected. Which leads into my third point: have standards and have expectations, and make them known amongst the band members. Something I have struggled with in the past is setting up expectations and setting up standards, and knowing when to say, what you're doing here, it's like not up to scratch. Some bands might have their level here where it's like, yeah, we can play messy, we can, as long as we're having fun and the energy is high. Your parts don't have to be precise, whatever. You can forget things, you can forget words on stage, like that's totally fine. There are heaps of bands that are like that, and I think, some people would even consider those kinds of bands to be more exciting and more rock, because we just have a good time. But other bands have higher expectations, and I think Dime Cabaret is a band that should have higher expectations and higher standards. We haven't always enforced those things, but we've definitely we've had conversations and have made moves to reinforce those high standards. And then if somebody's not hitting those standards, then you try to get them to those standards. You don't want to necessarily leave someone behind, but it's having those set in place can help you identify where something is lacking, or it can help you know as a unit what's expected. If you're in any professional situation, like it could be just a job even, where it's like you have to do your job. And what we expect from you is to do this. And while a band is different, I don't think it's completely different. It's just another thing that can cause problems if it's not addressed. If you have one person being like, you keep forgetting your lyrics on stage, or geez man, your singing is really rough when we play live or in the studio. But then that person's like, but so what? Like, we're just having fun here, aren't we? Like, that's, like, what's the big deal? And it really, all of these points really just do come down to communication, like, at its most basic level. As Devin Townsend once said, you know, being in a band is just like being in a marriage. You need to communicate what's expected. You need to communicate all these different things with your band members. And if you can't do that, then your band will inevitably collapse, or you will inevitably face these conflicts of differences where you realize this person thought they were in a different band. You know, a band where certain things that you think are important don't matter. My fourth point, which kind of ties all that together, is like, do you have a band leader? Or do you have a band where everybody is 100% equal? In my experience, I like a band to have a leader because I think it creates more cohesion and more vision. In the first band I was in, there was really no leader. I mean, that band had a lot of issues, but I feel like just somebody just give us a direction. It makes things run faster. It gets rid of like super boring arguments that lead to nowhere. If nobody is having the final say, and it's just 5 people with their own opinions, then every little decision will take so damn long to decide on that, you know, you spend more time arguing than you do getting anywhere, which was the case in our first band. And I know not everybody likes to work like that. Bands are supposed to be a collaborative thing, and you might probably think, well, no, we should all have a say here, and maybe we should vote. Like, all that stuff, I just hate it, like, to be honest. The worst thing is when you're suddenly having a vote to decide on something, where it's like 3 people want this, 2 people want this, or like 3 people want that, 3 people want that. If you just establish that somebody has the vision and the final say, there are so many tiny decisions that get made on a day-to-day basis when you're in a band. So many decisions that I don't bring everything that I decide on to the table for a band. Like, there are heaps of things that the other guys in the band don't even have any say on. And if we had to run through every little thing as a group, things would take so long. And look, I'm all about being quick and efficient and not wasting time just like chatting about something that doesn't matter. So in my experience, it doesn't even have to be a band leader. It could just be an agreement that this is kind of what guides us, and we use this as this thing that determines what we do, if that even makes any sense. And the last thing, and probably most important thing, when you're starting up a band and building strong foundations, is simply be honest with your bandmates. And this point sort of ties the whole thing together. If you don't like something, just say it. If you have a thought or something that you want to work on, say it. Bring ideas to the table. Feel free to hate an idea. Feel free to be the only person who likes an idea. Sometimes the minority idea is good or is the best way forward. Sometimes you might have an issue with another part that someone's playing, or the way that somebody is playing something or approaching something. And sometimes you don't want to like offend your bandmates. You don't want to like cause any chaos or negativity. But if you've got the 4 other tips down and you're like, you have those standards and you have everything sorted out, and something is not right, or somebody's not meeting a certain expectation, then you have to say it. Sometimes you have to make hard decisions in a band. Sometimes you have to ask someone to leave or fire someone if it's not working out. And none of these things are necessarily personal. Like, some things are personal. Like, I'm sure there are a lot of things or issues that could happen in a band where it clearly is personal. But when you have a common goal that you're working towards, it's not about the individuals, it's about what every individual is bringing to the table. And if you can't trust your bandmates to be honest with you, or to tell you when something's good, or to tell you when something's bad, then you're creating an environment of distrust, that I'm playing this part, nobody's saying it sucks, but I don't really know if they would tell me if it sucks, or here's a song that I'm bringing to you guys, any feedback, no feedback, but secretly everybody doesn't really like it, and then you build sort of resentment, or, you know, sort of things like that, or you let problems linger for too long. Like, it's just like being in a relationship, or anything like this, you know. Being honest about things when they happen will create a much stronger dynamic and a much better band. When you're solving problems, things get better, usually. So, yeah. If you're starting a band or you're in a band at the moment, good luck. Let me know how it's going in the comments. Or if you have any other tips that you can think of when it comes to being in a band, or making sure your band has strong foundations before you even get started, then leave them in the comments. Make sure you like this video, subscribe. I've been Brandon, this is Dime Cabaret, and I will see you in the next video.